You know what's an awesome feeling is tracking down one of your old childhood games, like Pokemon Silver, for example, one of the original Pokemon games that I played a lot of. I played Red and Blue as well, but this is when I really got into the series because, well, this game took what Red and Blue did and really opened it up and added a lot to it, and I really liked Pokemon Silver. Now, the one thing a lot of people probably realize by now is a lot of times when you buy these, whether it's at like a flea market or online on eBay or Amazon, a lot of times it won't save. You'll get it and the game will not save. And that's obviously an issue because you're not going to speed run or leave this on forever. So, what do we do about that? Well, I kind of posted on Twitter that I did get one of these and it didn't save and I was going to spend some time fixing it. And some of you guys really were interested in how I was going to go about doing that. So I figure make a video just for anyone who has this issue, or maybe if you pick one up, you might as well do this before you start playing it just in case. So we'll go over that. And honestly, this is a pretty easy way, I'd say to get into soldering because there's not a lot to do here. It's pretty easy. The points are very large and it'll kind of give you a nice beginner's, I guess, project to do some soldering and things like that. So let's get this guy apart and in this case, try to make it save again. First, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need a soldering iron. That's, I think, pretty obvious. Now, if you don't have one, I would say go to Radio Shack. They're gone now. You can't really go to Radio Shack anymore. That was an easy place to go, but I believe if you go to like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, they should have, in this case, or any kind of hardware store, they should have soldering irons in stock. I don't know how expensive they be because you go to Radio Shack and get one for like 15 bucks. Or of course, you can go on Amazon, you can go on eBay and pick one up relatively cheap, I'd say. You also need batteries. So you need a battery for the cartridge, and then you also need a bit to open the cartridge. Now, what's cool is there was a listing that I found on Amazon that I ordered that I'm going to use specifically for this project in this video that actually came with not only the bit, so you can actually pop this into any kind of driver head that takes bits, or honestly, you probably just use your fingers because the bits aren't tightened like super, like they're not really torqued very hard. And then, of course, it comes with batteries. This one actually came with 5 batteries, so technically you could repair 5 Game Boy games. Now, these only work for Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Technically, you could try to make it work with a Game Boy Advance, but you need smaller batteries for those. They do have those online, though, but this one in particular is going to be using a larger, these should be 2025 batteries that work fine in something like the Game Boy or Game Boy Color games. You may also need some solder. Sometimes these irons come with solder. There is going to be some solder left also on the pads, so you may not need them, but I like adding some and then also using flux. Flux is definitely optional, I'd say. Also, some Rosin core solder actually has flux technically built into it in the core, so you don't really technically need it if you have that kind of solder. So if you're kind of looking around and you don't know if your soldering iron comes with solder, order it. It's pretty cheap as well. Just get Rosin core because that means it has a little bit of flux built in. It'll make your life easier. All right, so here we are. We have our Pokemon Silver. This one actually said, it's funny because it actually says needs battery on the back, so I pretty much knew what I was getting into when I got this guy. But sometimes you can actually get them a little cheaper, and honestly, most people should be replacing the battery when they get this anyway, so I don't really have an issue with that. So you kind of take the screw out, you slide it down, and it opens right up, and look, we can see the battery right away. It's the big guy in the top right there. So let's put that down there, and we can kind of just take a quick look at the orientation of the battery, right? You can see there's a positive and negative side of the battery, and we can kind of see that it's flipped over upside down, and then the lead for the negatives going out here. So that's basically all we need to pay attention to in this case. So let's get our battery, and we can kind of see how this is set up, right? We can see that that's there, and that this guy would go just like that, right? So that's how we're going to go about replacing it. So this guy will kind of sit there, and he'll just set up just like that. So it works out well. And it's also marked on the board. So if you do get kind of mixed up and confused, maybe this battery comes off and then you look back down at the board and forget how it was, first take a picture before you do anything, but it is also marked negative and positive there. So just in case you forget. So now with that, I'm going to start removing the battery. Now you want to plug in your iron and let it heat up. I still have to let mine heat up, so when it's ready, we'll go ahead and take it off. All right, so we have our soldering iron here. Don't touch the hot part, obviously. And what we're going to do is kind of just heat up either side and kind of pick the battery up. A lot of times I'll just kind of get a fingernail under this side, heat this up, just kind of push the soldering iron on it. It'll heat up, the solder will become molten, and you can pretty much just pick it right up off of there after the entirety is like liquid. So there it goes, comes right off. There we go, that side's done, and then we'll kind of come over here, and then we'll get the other side. We'll just kind of do the exact same thing, just let it kind of heat it up. I don't think my iron's completely hot, but it's good enough for this. And there we go. So the battery is now off. You can kind of see how dirty those solder points are there. And this is where I would say you can get new solder or flux. Technically, there is enough solder there for me to just connect it. It wouldn't be the best connection, but it would work. So what I'm actually going to do is take the solder and flux that I have, new stuff, and I'm actually going to just kind of put some flux on there, just some paste flux. I use Gameboy. Gameboy is good. And then we'll just add some new solder to it, much like this. So this is actually rosin cores, so it might be a little bit of overkill adding the amount of flux I am, but technically, but I like to make sure I have a nice shiny connection. So you can kind of see how that gets very shiny very quick, like that. And you can kind of see the difference between how it looks when it is, let me get the focus, with the new solder on there. You can kind of see how much shinier it looked than what we just had, right? So this is now ready for the battery to go on. And we're going to go ahead and just add that battery down, right on. We just kind of put it there, and we can actually heat up the solder, and that lead will just kind of drop right on. And then we're good to go. So I added some extra solder as well, but you can see it's pretty much set up and good to go. I have very strong connection with this battery now. With the I added some solder there, some solder to that guy. I had a little extra up here, but that's just sticking to the board, so it's not a big deal. And that's it. It's ready to go. We're going to close it up and we'll test it now. All right, so now we got it all back together and everything with the new battery. Let's pop it in. I have the Game Boy player for the GameCube here, and let's quickly test it. So I went in, I made a new game, I went through everything. And after saving, I took the game out. You want to take it completely out and really take it out of the circuit, I guess, in this case. Because if you leave it in a Game Boy or even the GameCube that's plugged in, it may actually keep the save data on there because it'll continue to power the cartridge. And after you take it out for, like a 60 seconds or so, just kind of let it sit around for a minute. Pop it back in and then see if your save is there. If it is, you are good to go. This battery will last you a while. Generally, people notice that these things started dying after about 15 years, so you should be good to go for quite a while. And that's it, guys. That's how you replace the battery and I guess get a fully functional, fully saving Game Boy game. I also did this for a Link's Awakening DX that I got as well. No problems there. It's pretty much the same idea as this one. Most of the Game Boy games you open are going to look very similar, so generally the battery's in that same spot in the top right and everything. So hopefully this helped those who didn't know how to do this. It's not a very difficult thing to do, so if you're trying to get into soldering, why not take a shot? Thanks so much, guys, for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed a look at fixing a Game Boy game, making it save again. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Like the video if you guys enjoyed it, dislike if you didn't. And I'll see you guys tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.